The great hall of Vale had been built to make even powerful wolves feel small. Black stone columns climbed toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Silver banners hung between them, and 500 members of the pack knelt in silence as Alpha King Ronan Vale crossed the marble floor toward his throne. At his right walked Ash, the enormous silver royal wolf. 3 steps behind, where no one important would bother to look, Mara Quinn carried a cedar tray of ceremonial herbs for the royal healer. She had been warned twice that morning not to speak during the crowning, and Omega did not interrupt a royal ceremony. Mara had no intention of doing either. Then Ash stopped. One paw froze above the marble. His ears flattened. The thick fur along his spine lifted. Mara slowed. Ash was not looking at the crowd. He was looking at the crown. The crown of Vale rested on a black velvet cushion beside the throne, polished silver catching the winter light. Elder Corvin lifted it with both hands, preparing to place it on Ronan's head. Ash growled. The sound rolled through the hall like distant thunder. Every wolf went still. Ronan turned. Ash. The royal wolf did not look at him. His lips peeled back from his teeth. At the crown. Mara caught the scent a heartbeat later. Bitter. Metallic. Almost hidden beneath cedar oil and ceremonial smoke. Silverthorn. Her stomach dropped. "Don't touch it," she said. 500 heads turned. Elder Corvin froze with the crown raised halfway between the cushion and Ronan's head. Ronan's gray eyes found Mara. "What did you say?" Mara barely heard him. Ash lunged. Shouts exploded through the hall. Guards drew swords. Elder Corvin dropped the crown, and it struck the marble with a sharp ring before Ash seized the silver rim between his jaws. "Ash!" Ronan roared. The wolf jerked backward, snarling, then stumbled. Mara saw his hind legs buckle. Blood darkened the fur beneath his jaw. Foam gathered at the corner of his mouth. She dropped the cedar tray. Herbs scattered across the floor as she ran. 2 guards moved to stop her, but Ash collapsed hard enough to shake the marble beneath their boots. Mara slid to her knees beside him. His breathing came fast and shallow. She turned his head and saw a blackened thorn buried deep beneath the leather collar at the side of his neck. Poison. Mara pulled the small herb knife from her belt. Steel flashed. "Step away from him." Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. Mara looked up. The Alpha King stood 6 feet away. Around him, guards had formed a circle. Every blade pointed at her. "If I step away, he'll die." "Drop the knife." "No." The hall went silent again. No Omega said no to an Alpha King in his own hall. Ronan's expression hardened. "Mara Quinn, drop it." Ash convulsed. Mara ignored the command. She slid 2 fingers beneath the collar, found the swollen flesh around the thorn, and cut through the leather. Ash snapped blindly from the pain. One fang caught her forearm, but she did not pull away. She tore the collar free, pressed the flat of the knife beside the puncture, and sliced a narrow opening through the poisoned flesh. Blood spilled hot over her hands. Mara squeezed the wound. A bead of black liquid surfaced with the blood. "There," she whispered. Ash shuddered, then went limp. For one terrifying second, she thought she had been too late. Then his chest rose. Again, slower now. Mara pressed her palm against his ribs and felt the heartbeat beneath them. Weak, but steady. He's alive. Hands seized her shoulders. A guard ripped the knife away. Another forced her arms behind her back. "Wait," Mara snapped. "The poison is still—" "Search her," someone ordered. Gideon Rusk stepped through the circle. Ronan's beta crouched beside Mara's fallen herb satchel and began removing its contents. Bandage, dried feverfew, a stitching kit, 2 glass tinctures. Then Gideon stopped. Between a pouch of willow bark and a folded cloth sat a small dark vial. Mara stared at it. For a second, the room seemed to tilt. Mara knew every vial she carried, every leaf, every powder, because mistakes in healing killed people. That bottle had not been in her satchel when she entered the hall. Someone had placed it there after the ceremony began. Someone close. She had never seen it before. Gideon uncorked the bottle, smelled it carefully, and his face changed. Silverthorn. The word moved through the hall in a wave. Mara looked at Ronan. For the first time since she entered the great hall, he was not looking at Ash. He was looking directly at her. The crown lay on the floor between them. A thin black stain marked its silver edge. Mara understood two things at once. Someone had poisoned the crown, and whoever had done it had planned for her to be blamed. "Your Majesty," Gideon said quietly, holding up the vial. Mara saw the decision forming in Ronan's face before he spoke. Chain her. The chains were colder than Mara expected. Not heavier, but colder, as if the iron had been left outside overnight just for her. 2 guards marched her from the great hall, while voices followed behind them in broken waves. Poison, Royal Wolf, Omega, Traitor. Mara kept her eyes forward. Humiliation grew stronger when fed. Let them stare. None of it mattered as much as one fact. Ash was alive. For now, the dungeon beneath Vale Keep was carved into the mountain. Mara was placed in a narrow stone cell with one barred window and an iron ring fixed to the wall. The guards chained her ankle and wrists. Hours passed before anyone came. When the door finally opened, Ronan entered with Gideon and 3 council members. Lady Celeste Arden stood behind them in a dark blue gown, her expression unreadable. Mara rose as far as the chain allowed. Ronan did not sit. "The vial found in your satchel contained silverthorn," he said. "I know." Gideon's jaw tightened. "You knew?" "I know what silverthorn smells like. That is why Ash is still breathing." Elder Varric leaned forward. "Convenient." Mara turned to him. "Would you prefer the wolf had died?" His face hardened. Ronan lifted a hand. "Where did you get the poison?" "I didn't. It was in your bag. It was placed there." "By whom?" "If I knew, I would have said so in the hall." Gideon stepped closer. "You expect us to believe someone planted poison on you during the most guarded ceremony of the year?" "No. I expect you to investigate." Ronan's eyes narrowed. For one brief moment, Mara thought he might listen. Then Varric spoke. "Your Majesty, this is the kind of hesitation our enemies watch for. An attack on the royal wolf, poison on the crown, and an omega caught with the substance. If we treat this softly, neighboring packs will smell weakness." Lady Celeste finally spoke. "She saved the wolf." Varric looked at her. "Or she knew how much poison to use without killing him. That is speculation. So is her innocence." Mara looked at Ronan. This was the moment. He could ask for time. Instead, he looked toward Gideon. "What do you recommend?" Something sharp settled beneath Mara's ribs. "Exile," Gideon said. "Immediate, public. No execution unless Ash dies." Ronan was silent. Then, a low growl rose from the corridor. Every guard turned. Ash appeared at the far end of the passage. He moved slowly, one side of his neck bandaged, silver fur dark beneath the dressing. The royal healer followed several steps behind. "Your Majesty, he would not stay in the infirmary." Ash ignored everyone. He walked directly to Mara's cell. The wolf stopped at the bars and lowered himself to the stone floor. Beside her, Mara knelt. Ash pushed his nose between the bars. She reached through and touched his forehead. The growl stopped. No one spoke. Celeste looked at Ronan. "Does that look like a wolf sitting beside the woman who tried to kill him?" Ronan stared at Ash. Mara could see the doubt. Then Gideon said quietly, "Animals can be conditioned." Mara turned toward him. For the first time, she noticed something she should have noticed earlier. Gideon had not looked surprised when Ash appeared. Ronan exhaled. "The evidence against Mara stands until proven otherwise." Celeste stared at him. "Ronan." He did not look at her. "Mara Quinn, you are stripped of your position in the royal infirmary. At sunrise, you will be escorted beyond the eastern border. You are forbidden from returning to Vale territory unless summoned by the crown. The words were careful. Legal. Cowardly. Mara stood. A guard reached for the healer insignia pinned to her tunic, but Mara stopped him. I'll do it. She unfastened the small silver emblem herself. For 6 years she had worn it while treating servants and wounded wolves no ranked healer wanted to touch. She placed it in Ronan's hand. Keep your title. His fingers closed around the emblem. Mara, you already made your decision, Your Majesty. At dawn, Mara walked out, carrying one canvas bag. The eastern sky had begun to pale. No crowd gathered to watch her leave, but Mara preferred it that way. She had no tears left for people who had chosen evidence over truth standing before them. Behind her, Ash strained against Ronan's command. Stay. The wolf stopped, but he did not sit. For the first time in his life, Ash looked at his king and hesitated. Mara did not look back. That night, Ronan woke to claws scraping stone. He found Ash alone in the great hall, dragging one paw across the crown of Vale. Again. Ronan picked it up. Beneath the silver rim, nearly invisible in the torchlight, was a thin black stain. Ronan did not sleep after finding the black stain beneath the crown of Vale. By sunrise, the crown lay sealed inside a glass case in the royal healer's laboratory, and every servant who had touched it during the ceremony had been confined to their quarters. Ronan stood beside the work table, while Felix scraped a nearly invisible residue from the silver rim onto a white ceramic dish. Felix added 3 drops of clear solution. The liquid turned black. Silver thorn, he said. Ronan's jaw tightened. Enough to kill Ash? No, not from the crown alone. Felix looked toward the bandaged royal wolf lying near the fire. The thorn beneath his collar carried a much stronger concentration. But this, he tapped the dish. This was meant for skin contact. Slow exposure. Hours, perhaps. Long enough to enter the blood before anyone noticed. Ronan looked at the crown. He had almost worn it. A memory struck him with brutal clarity. Mara running across the great hall. Her refusal to drop the knife. The black liquid surfacing from Ash's wound. And then the vial in her satchel. Could she have planted both? Felix hesitated. That hesitation bothered Ronan more than a quick answer would have. She could have, the healer said carefully. But if her intention was to poison you, exposing the crown during the ceremony makes little sense. She drew attention to the danger before you touched it. Ronan said nothing. Ash lifted his head. The wolf's pale eyes fixed on him with an expression Ronan would have dismissed as meaningless from any other animal. From Ash, it felt uncomfortably close to accusation. By midday, Gideon had assembled a formal investigation team. Ronan ordered every person who had entered the Great Hall before the ceremony questioned, every supply ledger checked, every herb cabinet sealed. He told himself it was procedure. He did not tell anyone that he had begun seeing Mara's face every time he looked at the healer insignia still sitting on his desk. 3 days east of Vale territory. Mara Quinn was trying very hard not to think about any of them. Her boots were wet through. Her shoulder ached beneath the weight of her bag, and she had eaten the last of her dried bread before dawn. By late afternoon, the forest thinned, and a cluster of red-roofed buildings appeared beyond the trees. Red. Hollow. It was smaller than she had imagined. A trading settlement built where 2 roads crossed, crowded with wagons, timber houses, and travelers from packs Mara had only heard about in passing. No Vale banners hung above the streets. No one bowed when an alpha passed. No one looked twice at Mara. For the first time in years, being invisible felt like freedom. She found the clinic because of the smell of boiled linen and feverfew drifting from an open window. Inside, a woman with copper-streaked hair was arguing with a merchant over the price of bandages. I said I'll pay you Friday. You said that last Friday. And somehow I still haven't learned to grow coins in my herb garden. The merchant muttered something and left. The woman noticed Mara. If you're selling something, I'm broke. I'm looking for work. The woman's eyes dropped to Mara's worn clothes, then to the healing knife at her belt. You a healer? I was. Was? Long story. The woman studied her for another second, then jerked her chin toward a cot near the back. Can you set a broken wrist? Yes. Can you clean a wound without making the patient scream loud enough to scare away paying customers? Usually. Then I'm Tessa Rowan, and you can earn dinner. Mara almost smiled. She had barely set down her bag when the front door burst open. A man carried a boy of perhaps 8 in his arms. He won't wake up. Tessa moved first, but Mara was already beside her. The child's skin burned with fever. His breathing came too fast. Purple shadows marked the skin beneath his eyes. Infection? Tessa asked. Mara smelled the boy's breath. Mattel. Not silverthorn. Something earthier. Where does your family get water? The father blinked. North Well. Mara looked at Tessa. Don't give him any more water from there. Tessa's expression sharpened. Why? Because he isn't sick. Mara reached for her satchel. He's being poisoned. Back in Vale, Ronan stood over another set of reports. 3 guards from the eastern barracks had collapsed within hours of each other. Vomiting. Weakness. Tremors. Felix placed the medical notes on Ronan's desk. These men never touched the crown. Ronan read the same line twice. Then a third time. A cold certainty settled in his chest. The crown had not been the whole attack. It had been the beginning. And for the first time, Ronan understood that exiling Mara might have removed the one person who had noticed the danger before anyone else. Somewhere beyond his borders, she was gone. Inside them, whatever she had tried to warn them about was still moving, quietly, invisibly, through a kingdom that still believed the threat had ended with one accused Omega. The boy survived the night. By dawn, 6 more people from Red Hollow's northern quarter had arrived at Tessa Rowan's clinic with the same fever, trembling hands, and metallic breath. Marta had not slipped. She moved from cot to cot, checking pupils, pulse, and breathing, while Tessa boiled water from another well and shouted instructions. What is it? Tessa asked. Not one poison, Mara said. Something in the north well is reacting with whatever they ate yesterday. A farmer on the nearest cot groaned. Mara turned to his wife. What did your family eat? Bread. Stew. Same as always. What kind of grain? The woman frowned. Winter rye. A wagon came in 2 days ago. Mara went still. From where? North Road. Tessa saw the change in her face. You know something. I know I've smelled this before. Not the exact poison. The same bitter undertone beneath something harmless. Silverthorn. Mara crossed the room and opened the sack of grain the farmer's wife had brought with her. She rubbed several kernels between her fingers, then held them under the lamp. A faint black dust clung to her skin. Don't let anyone eat from that shipment. Tessa swore under her breath. Within an hour, Mara had the town moving. She ordered every northern well closed. Grain merchants sealed sacks delivered during the previous 3 days. Tessa sent runners to the bakeries. Mara mixed charcoal, willow bark, and binding herbs into an antidote while the clinic filled beyond capacity. No one asked what rank she held. No one cared. They asked what to do. And Mara answered. She hated needing anyone. Yet by noon, even she had to trust strangers with urgent tasks no single healer could possibly manage alone. By afternoon, a merchant wagon barreled into the square with a broken axle. The driver shouted that 2 guards escorting the grain had collapsed. Mara ran outside. One guard was unconscious. The other could barely stand. Don't touch the sacks, Mara said. The driver stared at her. Why? Because they're poisoned. A murmur spread. Then one of the sacks split. Black powder spilled across the boards. The driver jumped back. Mara climbed onto the wagon and cut open a second bag with her knife. The grain inside looked normal, but beneath the top layer, Small wax packets had been hidden between the kernels. Tessa climbed up beside her. "What in hell is that?" Mara picked one up carefully. The wax seal bore no merchant mark. She opened it. Silverthorn dust. Her pulse kicked hard. This was not random contamination. Someone had packed poison inside food meant to travel through neutral territory. "Burn the wagon," Mara said. The merchant blanched. "That's 40 crowns of grain. And 1 funeral for every family who eats it." He stared at her for half a second, then looked at the sick guards. "Burn it." By sunset, flames consumed the wagon. Mara stood watching black smoke roll into the evening sky, and for the first time since leaving Vale, she allowed herself to think of Ronan. If shipments like this had reached Red Hollow, they could have reached Vale. Maybe they already had. Far west, Ronan Vale was asking the same question. Felix had confirmed contamination in grain stores from 2 military barracks. The amounts were small, barely enough to cause weakness after repeated exposure. That made it worse. This was not an assassination attempt. It was preparation. Ronan stood in the records chamber while clerks pulled 2 months of inventory complaints. "Anything involving Silverthorn," he ordered. "Missing herbs, mislabeled shipments, unusual sickness. Everything." A young clerk hesitated. "Your Majesty." Ronan looked over. There were reports. "Bring them." The clerk swallowed. "They were never entered into the royal archive." Ronan's expression hardened. "Then how do you know they existed?" "Because I received them." The clerk removed 3 folded sheets from a locked cabinet. Ronan recognized the handwriting before he saw the signature. Mara Quinn. The first report warned that Silverthorn quantities in the infirmary did not match purchase records. The second documented 2 soldiers with unexplained tremors after eating northern grain. The third was marked urgent. Ronan read it slowly. If Silverthorn has entered the royal supply chain, contamination may extend beyond the infirmary. Recommend immediate inspection of food, medicine, and ceremonial stores. His chest tightened. When were these filed? 2 weeks before the ceremony. Why did they never reach me? The clerk went pale. I was told the matter had already been reviewed. By whom? The clerk looked toward the door as if afraid someone might hear. Then he pointed to the receiving mark at the bottom of the page. 1 name had been written beneath it. Gideon Rusk. Ronan stared at the signature. His oldest friend. His beta. The man who had stood beside him while Mara was chained. He said it was an inventory error. The clerk whispered. Ronan folded the reports carefully. For the first time since Mara walked beyond the eastern border, regret gave way to something colder. Suspicion. Back in Red Hollow, Mara opened 1 final wax packet from the burning wagon. Inside was a strip of paper protected from the poison. 3 words had been written on it. Vale Winter Stores. Mara looked toward the western road. Whatever had started in Ronan's great hall had followed the supply routes far beyond his kingdom, and someone was still sending it home. The poison had not been placed in Vale's stores by accident. By the following morning, Ronan had ordered every military kitchen, infirmary, wine cellar, and supply warehouse sealed. No shipment entered or left the territory without inspection. He told the council it was a precaution. He did not tell them that Mara's reports were locked inside his private desk, or that Gideon's name appeared on every page she had tried to send him. Trust, Ronan was learning, became dangerous when it stopped asking questions. Felix worked through the night testing grain, dried meat, tonic powders, and wolf feed. Shortly before noon, he entered Ronan's study carrying 4 black-stained ceramic dishes. Different supplies, Felix said. Same substance. How much? Not enough to kill anyone quickly. That is what worries me. Ronan understood. A weakened army. Felix nodded. Give soldiers small doses for weeks, and they become slower, easier to exhaust, more prone to fever. By the time anyone recognizes a pattern, half the fighting force could already be compromised. The crown had never been the true attack. It had been a test. Far east, Mara reached the same conclusion from the strip hidden inside the poisoned wagon: Vale Winter Stores. She spread the packet, black dust and shipping mark across Tessa's table. The crown had drawn attention. The grain would not. Whoever planned this wanted Ronan frightened by one threat, while a quieter one weakened, everyone sworn to defend him. Mara looked west. They're preparing Vale for something bigger. Ronan dismissed Felix and summoned Gideon. His beta entered calmly. You wanted me? Ronan kept Mara's reports hidden beneath another ledger. I want every northern supplier questioned again. We already questioned them. Then do it again. Gideon studied him for a moment. You think this goes beyond the crown? I think someone wanted us looking at one poisoned omega while something larger moved through our stores. For the first time, Gideon's expression shifted. Barely. You are reconsidering Mara's guilt. I am reconsidering everything. Silence stretched between them. Then Gideon inclined his head. I'll handle it. Ronan watched him leave. 3 months earlier, he would have trusted those words completely. Now they sounded like a threat. By evening, another name had entered the investigation: Lady Celeste Arden. Her family controlled 2 northern trade routes, and 1 contaminated shipment had passed through Arden land. Elder Varric seized on the connection immediately. Her father has wanted greater influence over Vale. For years. Ronan looked toward Celeste across the council chamber. Do you have anything to say? Yes, she replied. I think your council is becoming desperate enough to accuse anyone convenient. Varric bristled. Celeste ignored him and placed a folded letter on the table. I received this 6 weeks ago. Ronan opened it. The writer offered House Arden military support and a formal alliance if Celeste agreed to stand beside a new ruler of Vale after Ronan became incapable of maintaining command. No signature, no seal. Why did you keep this? Ronan asked. Because I assumed it was political bait. Celeste's mouth tightened. And because I did not know someone was actually poisoning your kingdom. Varric leaned forward. This could have been written by anyone. It could. Celeste looked directly at Ronan. Which is why you should investigate it instead of deciding whom you want guilty first. The words landed harder than she probably intended. Or perhaps exactly as hard. That night, Ronan returned to the great hall alone. He stood where Mara had been forced to her knees. He could still see the blood on her hands. The knife. Ash collapsing. He could also remember Ash walking to her cell afterward and lying beside the bars. There had been doubt. Ronan had felt it. He had chosen not to follow it. Because exile had been easier than uncertainty. He summoned the full council before midnight. Gideon arrived last. Ronan stood beneath the throne, the crown of Vale untouched on the table beside him. The investigation into Mara Quinn is closed. The room stirred. Varric rose. Your Majesty, sit. He did. Ronan continued. Silverthorn was found on the crown, in military grain, in medical stores, and in shipments. Mara warned this court about before the ceremony. Her reports were suppressed. The evidence now shows that she acted to save Ash and prevent the crown from reaching me. Gideon's face remained unreadable. Ronan forced himself to keep looking at the council. I exiled an innocent woman. No one spoke. I did it, because the evidence against her was convenient, because this council demanded certainty, and because I chose order over investigation. His voice hardened. That decision was mine. He ordered Mara's healer standing restored. Every accusation against her erased from Vale records, and a royal proclamation sent to every allied territory clearing her name. He did not know where she was. He did not know whether she would ever hear the words. That was not the point. He owed her the truth even if she never returned to claim it. When the chamber emptied, a young guard remained near the door. Your Majesty. Ronan turned. The guard was pale. I saw something the night before the ceremony. Ronan waited. Beta Rusk entered the records room after Mara filed her final report. Ronan's pulse slowed. The guard swallowed. He ordered me to burn it. Ronan did not arrest Gideon. Not that night. The guard's testimony confirmed suspicion, but it was not enough to expose a conspiracy that had already reached Vale's food, medicine, military stores, and royal court. If Gideon was involved, men beneath him were involved too. Ronan could seize his beta and gain one prisoner while losing every name connected to him. So he did something harder. He pretended nothing had changed. The next morning, Gideon stood beside him during council, as if he had never ordered Mara's report destroyed. Ronan listened to his recommendations, approved routine patrols, and thanked him for his work. Then, after sunset, Ronan left Vale through the eastern gate. No royal carriage, no honor guard, no army, only ash. Inside Ronan's travel pack were 3 things that mattered more than food: Mara's healer insignia, the proclamation clearing her name, and a weathered leather journal recovered from the quarters she had been forced to abandon. Her grandmother's. Ronan had found it beneath a loose floorboard. He had no right to read it. He had no right to keep it. 2 days east, merchants finally gave him a name: Red Hollow. A healer there had stopped a poisoning outbreak. Dark-haired, young, quiet, better with herbs than half the trained physicians in the Northern Territories. Ronan did not need to hear her name. Ash began running before the town came fully into view. Ash. The wolf ignored him. Ash. For the second time in his life, the royal wolf disobeyed. Ronan followed through the crowded market until Ash turned down a narrow street and stopped before a modest clinic. Mara stepped outside carrying a basin of bloodied water. She froze. Ash crossed the distance first. He pressed his head against her waist so hard, she staggered backward. Ash. She set the basin down and buried both hands in his silver fur. Ash leaned into her, eyes closing. Only then did Mara look beyond him. Ronan stood in the road. He had imagined this moment through the entire journey. In every version he knew what to say. Now he knew nothing. Mara straightened. Why are you here? Ronan walked forward, but stopped several feet away. Not to ask you back. Something in her expression shifted. He removed the silver healer insignia from his coat. This belongs to you. Mara did not reach for it. Ronan placed it on the wooden rail beside the clinic door, then offered her the sealed proclamation. Every charge against you has been formally withdrawn. Copies were sent to our allied territories. Her eyes moved to his face. You found the poison. Yes. On the crown? And in the grain. Medicine. Military stores. Mara's jaw tightened. I found the same thing here. She went inside and returned with a wax packet wrapped in cloth. Black residue stained its edge. It came through Red Hollow in a grain wagon, she said. The packet was marked for Vale winter stores. Ronan reached into his pack one last time. When Mara saw the journal, the careful distance in her face broke. My grandmother's book. I found it in your old quarters. She took it quickly, thumb moving over the cracked leather. You should have brought it sooner. I should have done a lot of things sooner. Mara looked up. Ronan continued before pride could stop him. I was wrong. The council pressured me. Gideon gave me evidence. None of that changes the fact that Ash lay outside your cell, and I knew something did not fit. I saw doubt, and chose the easier answer. The easier answer was me. Yes, the Omega. No one important would question losing. Yes, Ronan had heard anger from rival alphas, commanders, and council elders without flinching. Mara's quiet certainty cut deeper than any of them. She was not trying to wound him. She was simply naming what he had done, and that made denial impossible. She had every right to say it aloud now. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Mara asked, So why are you really here? Because Vale is still being poisoned. I think the person who framed you is inside my command structure, and I need someone who understands this poison better than anyone I have left. You need my help. I do. And if I say no, Ronan metargaze, then Ash and I leave before dark. For the first time, Mara looked genuinely surprised. No threat. No command. Ronan stepped back. I came to return what I had no right to take. Your name, your work, your family's book. The rest has to be your choice. Behind Mara, someone inside the clinic called for the healer. She turned, instinctively. Ronan saw it then. Not the overlooked Omega who had knelt in chains beneath his throne. A woman people here depended on. Mara looked back at him. Come inside. Ronan's pulse changed. Not forgiveness. Not yet. I'll show you what was in the wagon, she said. Then you tell me everything you found in Vale. Ash entered the clinic first. Ronan followed. For once, the Alpha King did not lead. Ronan spent the next 3 hours at Tessa Rowan's clinic, learning how little authority meant when no one cared about his crown. Mara spread the poisoned wax packets across a scarred wooden table. Beside them lay copies of Vale's inventory records, the strip marked Vale Winter Stores, and Felix's notes describing the sick soldiers. Tessa stood across from Ronan with her arms folded. So you're the king who exiled her. Ronan looked up. Yes. Tessa nodded once. Good. Saves me asking. Mara almost smiled. Can we focus? I am focused, Tessa said. I just like knowing which mistakes are sitting at my table. Ronan accepted the insult without argument. That, more than anything, made Mara glance at him. Weeks earlier he would have answered with rank. Now he simply slid another report toward her. The Eastern Barracks received this grain 12 days before the ceremony. Mara compared the shipping marks. Samrout. Yes, but not the same supplier. No. She frowned. Then the supplier isn't the connection. Ronan leaned closer. What is? Mara opened one wax packet with tweezers. Inside, the silverthorn dust had been mixed with dried green flakes. She crushed one between her fingers. Bitter root. Ronan waited. It slows absorption. Without it, silverthorn acts too quickly. Soldiers would get sick after one meal and everyone would know the food was poisoned. With bitter root, they could eat it for weeks. Ronan's expression hardened. And grow weaker slowly enough to blame winter illness. Exactly. Silence settled between them. Then a small voice came from behind Mara. Miss Quinn? A girl of perhaps 7 stood in the doorway, holding a bandaged hand. Mara's entire expression changed. What happened, Ellie? I pulled the bandage off. Of course you did. It itched. That is not a medical emergency. It felt like one. Tessa snorted and disappeared into the back room. Mara knelt, unwrapped the child's hand, and inspected the healing cut. Ronan watched her speak softly while cleaning the wound. The girl did not flinch once. Hold this, Mara said without looking up. Ronan realized she was talking to him. She handed him a bowl of clean water. He took it, then a strip of cloth, then another. By the time Mara finished, the Alpha King of Vale was standing beside a 7-year-old girl holding used bandages. Ellie looked up at him. Are you a healer too? No. Mara tied the final knot. He's learning. The girl accepted that and ran out. Ronan looked at the bloody cloth in his hand. Mara laughed. It was quiet and brief, but real. He stared at her. She immediately looked back at the table. Don't make that important. I wasn't. You were. I was appreciating progress. You held a bowl. Royal progress. That earned him another small smile. The moment passed, but something between them had changed. Later, when Tessa left to check the northern well, Ronan and Mara worked alone beneath the clinic lamps. I cleared your name before I knew where you were, Ronan said. Mara did not look up. I know. I'm not telling you because I expect anything. Then why tell me? Because I need you to understand. I didn't come here hoping an apology would buy you back. Mara set down the ledger. I believe you're sorry. Ronan lifted his eyes. That doesn't mean I trust you. I know. No, I need you to hear it. You listened to people who found me convenient to blame. You saw Ash choose my cell and ignored what that meant. If I work with you now, it is because people could die, Not because you returned my title. I understand. And if this ends tomorrow, I may still stay here. Ronan's answer came without hesitation. Then I'll leave you here. Mara studied him. Months ago, he would have heard defiance in her words. Now he heard a boundary. Good, she said. Ronan nodded. What would it take for you to trust me again? Mara looked back at the poisoned packet. Don't ask me to. He waited. Earn it. The words settled between them. Ronan accepted them. Close to midnight, Mara opened Felix's final report. One ingredient appeared repeatedly in the contaminated samples. Bitter root. She stood so quickly, the chair scraped the floor. What? Mara grabbed the winter ration list. Military rations. Use bitter root. Ronan's face changed. Why? To preserve dried meat during cold campaigns. Mara spread the documents side by side. The grain, the medicine, the crown, none were the final weapon. They were tests. Ronan, she said quietly. The poison was designed for your army. How long before the winter rations are distributed? Mara looked at the date on the shipment order, then at him. They already are. Ronan pulled the map toward him. 6 border camps, nearly 400. Mara traced the road and stopped at a supply junction outside Vale. If the shipments moved on schedule, the first camps received them tomorrow. Ronan reached for his coat. Mara caught his wrist. Running back without proof won't stop whoever planned this. His eyes met hers. Then, what will? Finding it first. Mara found the answer just before dawn. The poisoned winter rations had been divided into 6 wagons, all passing through the supply junction at Blackridge Crossing. If we reach Blackridge before noon, we can stop them before they split. Mara said. Ronan studied the map. Can you identify the contaminated crates without opening every one? Yes. Whoever mixed the silverthorn used rendered wolf fat to seal the packets. Heat it, and the smell changes. Ronan looked toward the dark window. Then we move now. Tessa refused to stay behind. You'll need hands if soldiers are already sick. Mara started to argue, but Tessa cut her off. Other people are allowed to help. Ronan almost smiled. They left Red Hollow with Ash ahead, and 2 clinic wagons carrying water, herbs, and antidotes. Ronan sent no message to Vale. He no longer trusted the messenger routes. For 4 hours, the road stayed empty. Then Ash stopped. The wolf lowered his head and growled toward the trees. Ronan reached for his sword. 3 riders emerged. Vale colors. For 1 second, Ronan thought they were loyal scouts. Then the first rider raised a crossbow. Ash. The bolt flew. Ash twisted aside as Ronan drew his blade. 1 rider charged Mara's wagon. Ronan struck him from the saddle as Tessa turned the horses away. Mara saw the second crossbowman aiming at Ronan. She threw the nearest thing in reach. A glass bottle shattered against the rider's face. He screamed. Was that medicine? Ronan shouted. Expensive medicine. He blocked another strike. I'll reimburse you. You'd better. The fight ended quickly. 1 attacker fled. Ash brought him down without killing him. The other 2 wore Vale uniforms. But beneath one man's cloak, Ronan found a black iron token stamped with a wolf's broken crown. He knew the mark. Gideon's father had used it 20 years earlier as the symbol of his private war company. Ronan went still. Mara saw the recognition. What is it? My mistake finally has a name. The captured rider laughed through bloody teeth. Too late. Ronan crouched. Too late for what? The man spat near his boots. By sunset, Vale won't have a king. They bound him to the back of a wagon and pushed toward Blackridge. At the crossing, they found the first poisoned shipment, then the second, then all 6. Mara heated samples from each crate, identified the poison stores, and ordered them separated. Soldiers already showing symptoms were given antidote. Clean rations were redistributed. Ronan stood beside her as the contaminated barrel was rolled toward the burn pit. We stopped it. Mara looked at the 6 wagons. No. We stopped this. A horn sounded from the southern road. A rider approached at a dead sprint. Ronan recognized him as Captain Hale, commander of the Eastern Watch. Hale nearly fell from his horse. Your Majesty, what happened? Gideon called an emergency council session before dawn. Ronan's face became still. Hale continued. He presented letters claiming you abandoned Vale under Omega influence while the border crisis worsened. He says you left without command authority and concealed evidence of military contamination. Mara felt cold spread through her chest. Ronan asked, The council believed him? Not all of them. Enough? Hale hesitated. Enough to invoke the absence clause. Tessa looked between them. What does that mean? Ronan answered quietly. If an Alpha King abandons the territory during an active military threat, the council can appoint a regent until he returns and proves command. Mara already knew the next answer. Gideon. Hale nodded. He controls the Great Hall, the armory, and most of the Central Guard. Ronan looked west. Vale was less than half a day away. If he rode now, he could reach the Great Hall before sunset. He could challenge the council. He could save his crown. Mara turned toward the border camps. Smoke rose beyond the northern ridge. One of the young soldiers stumbled beside the medical wagon and collapsed. Then another. Mara checked the first man's pulse. This shipment wasn't the first one. Hale's expression changed. What? Some of the camps have already been eating contaminated rations. How many? Ronan asked. Mara looked at the camp markers on the map. At least 200 soldiers could be exposed. Hale stepped toward Ronan. Your Majesty, if you don't return now, Gideon will make the regency permanent. Ronan said nothing. Mara stood. Go. He looked at her. You heard him. If you stay, you may lose the throne. And if I leave, then I treat them. You can't treat 200 men alone. I won't be alone. Tessa was already unloading supplies. Mara held Ronan's gaze. Go save your crown. The words should have made the decision easier. Instead, Ronan looked at the sick soldiers lying along the road. Months earlier, he had chosen order because it was easier than uncertainty. He had chosen his position over the truth, standing in front of him. He would not make the same choice twice. He removed the royal signet from his hand. Hale stared. Ronan placed it in the captain's palm. Ride to Vale. Tell the council I know exactly what the absence clause costs me. Your Majesty, tell them I stayed. Hale looked at the wounded soldiers. Understanding crossed his face. Ronan turned to Mara. A throne isn't a kingdom. For several seconds, she could not speak. Then Ash growled. The captured rider had begun laughing again. Ronan turned toward him. What? The man smiled. You still think Gideon wanted your throne? Mara felt the bottom drop out of the moment. Ronan stepped closer. What does he want? The rider's smile widened. To make sure there's no kingdom left for you to return to. The prisoner stopped laughing, only when Ash stepped close enough for his breath to stir the man's hair. Ronan crouched in front of him. What did Gideon order? The rider's smile thinned. Mara saw fear replace bravado. 3 border towers, he said, burned before midnight. Once the soldiers are weak, the northern gates open from inside. Gideon tells the council it was an invasion. Then, he becomes the man who saves what is left. Ronan's face went cold. He does not want the throne, Mara said. No, Ronan answered. He wants a war only he could win. They moved immediately. Blackridge became a field hospital within minutes. Mara divided the exposed soldiers into groups by symptoms, while Tessa mixed charcoal solution and bitterroot neutralizer. Ronan sent every healthy rider toward the nearest camps with sealed instructions. Stop all winter rations, boil drinking water, burn any crate marked with the Northern Crescent. No one argued with Mara now. Captains came to her for orders. Pulse first, she told one. If it is irregular, bring them here. If they can still stand, make them drink before they march. What about vomiting? Let it happen. Do not stop it unless they lose consciousness. Ronan watched her move through the rows of sick warriors with blood on her sleeves and smoke in her hair. Months earlier, Vale had called her expendable. Now its army waited on her decisions. By afternoon, the first camp stabilized. The second sent word that 20 men had collapsed, but no one had died. Then, Ash disappeared into the tree line. Ronan reached for his sword. A moment later, the wolf returned, dragging a man by the cloak. The prisoner wore Vale armor. Inside his coat was a bundle of sealed orders bearing Gideon's handwriting. Ronan broke the first seal. Open North Gate at midnight. The second, destroy signal tower before relief arrives. The third contained a list of captains promised rank under Gideon's rule. Mara looked at Ronan. Is that enough? It is enough to hang him. Then let us make sure he lives long enough to hear the charges. They rode for Vale before sunset. Not alone. Behind them came more than 60 soldiers from Blackridge and the eastern camps. Men who had been too weak to stand that morning, and now rode beneath no regent's banner. They rode for the king who had chosen them over his crown. By the time Vale Keep appeared against the darkening sky, Gideon had already assembled the pack in the great hall. Ronan entered through the main doors with Mara on one side and Ash on the other. The room erupted. Half the central guard lowered their weapons. The other half looked toward Gideon. He stood at the foot of the throne, wearing the regent's silver chain. You abandoned Vale, Gideon said. Ronan kept walking. I left to stop the poison you put in my army. A murmur rolled through the hall. Gideon laughed once. And your proof? Mara placed the captured orders on the council table. His handwriting, his seal, his men, and Omega's evidence. The insult landed differently now. The great doors opened again. Captain Hale stepped inside, with the soldiers from Blackridge. One still had Mara's bandage wrapped around his arm. Another leaned on a spear. A third stared directly at Gideon. She saved us, he said. Gideon's expression changed. The soldier continued. The rations were poisoned. We found his men guarding the shipment. More warriors entered behind him. Living proof. Gideon looked toward the council. You would hand Vale to a king who chose an Omega over his own throne? Gideon's voice cut across the chamber. My father died because your father trusted a peace treaty. 43 wolves died with him. I learned what your bloodline never did. Mercy gives enemies time to sharpen their knives. Ronan stopped a few paces away. And so you poisoned your own soldiers? I weakened them long enough to expose every coward in this kingdom. After the attack, Vale would have followed a leader willing to finish wars instead of postponing them. Ronan stopped beneath the crown. No. Silence fell. I chose my people over my throne. For the first time, Gideon had no answer. Then he drew his sword. Everything happened at once. Gideon lunged toward Mara. Ronan intercepted him. Steel struck steel. Ash roared as guards scattered. Gideon fought with the brutal precision of a man who had spent years beside Ronan learning every weakness in his defense. You think mercy makes you strong, Gideon snarled. Ronan blocked another strike. I think fear made you mistake cruelty for strength. Gideon twisted, broke away, and drove toward Mara again. Mara did not retreat. She grabbed the heavy iron lamp from the council table and swung. It struck Gideon's wrist. His sword fell. Ash slammed into his chest and drove him to the floor. Ronan raised his blade. Gideon stared up at him. Do it. Months ago, Ronan might have. Instead, he lowered the sword. Chain him. The same command that had once condemned Mara now ended Gideon's rebellion. Guards seized the former beta. No one resisted. Ronan looked across the hall at Mara. There was blood on her sleeve, exhaustion beneath her eyes, and no fear in her face. He had returned expecting to fight for his crown. Instead, the kingdom had watched him prove he could lose it, and still choose them. The great hall smelled of smoke, blood, and burnt oil when Gideon was taken away. No one cheered. Victory did not feel clean, with wounded soldiers still being carried through the doors and poisoned grain burning outside. Ronan spent the next 2 days counting the cost. 17 soldiers remained under Mara's care. 2 council members were arrested for helping Gideon hide the supply records. Captain Hale took command of the Central Guard, and every winter ration in Vale territory was recalled. Mara slept 6 hours across those 2 days. Ronan noticed. He did not order her to rest. He brought her food instead. On the 3rd morning, Mara stood in the royal infirmary, examining a young warrior when Ronan appeared. "The council is assembled." She did not look up. "Congratulations. They asked for you." That made her pause. "Why?" "Because I told them this meeting doesn't happen without you." Mara tied off the bandage and faced him. "I'm not part of your council." "No." "Your mate?" Ronan's expression shifted. "Not unless you decide that." Mara washed the blood from her hands. "Lead the way." Mara had last stood there with chains around her wrists and Ash's blood on her hands. Now she entered beside Ronan, while Ash padded between them. Hundreds of wolves filled the hall. No one whispered traitor. Ronan stepped beneath the throne. The crown of Vale rested on a table beside him. He did not put it on. "Mara Quinn was falsely accused in this hall," he began. "She was stripped of her work, her home, and her name because I chose certainty over truth." Silence held the room. She warned this kingdom before any of us understood what was happening. We ignored her. Then she saved the people we failed to protect. Every eye turned toward Mara. Months ago, she would have wanted to disappear. Now she stood. Effective today, rank will no longer determine who may train in Vale's medical corps. Healers will be chosen by skill, discipline, and service. Mara Quinn will be offered authority to establish an independent healing command with access to military and civilian supply records. A murmur moved through the chamber. Mara looked at him sharply. "Offered," Ronan repeated. "Whatever place Mara holds in Vale will be one she chooses." That quieted the room. Ronan turned toward her. "I took your choice once. I won't do it again." Something warm moved through Mara's chest. Not destiny, trust. After the gathering, Mara found Ronan alone on the western balcony. Ash lay near the doors. "You meant it?" Mara asked. "Which part?" "That. I can say no." "To the healing command?" "To all of it." He faced her. "Yes. And if I go back to Red Hollow, I'll make sure Tessa receives every medical supply she asks for, and I'll leave you alone unless you invite me." Mara almost laughed. "That sounds expensive. I owe her several bottles of medicine." "You owe her more than that." I suspected. Then Ronan grew serious. "The night of the ceremony, when I grabbed your wrist before the guards took you, I felt something." Mara became still. So did I. A warmth had flashed through her skin, gone almost before she understood it. Ronan nodded. "I think we both know what it was. The mate bond." For months, Mara had imagined such a bond would feel like a command written by the moon. Instead, standing here now, it felt like a question. Ronan stepped closer but did not touch her. "The moon can choose a bond," he said. "It doesn't get to choose your answer." Mara looked at the man who had once failed her, then at the king who had given up his throne before abandoning his people. "And if my answer is yes," his breath caught, "then I spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Mara reached for his hand. "Then yes." Ash lifted his head as if he had been waiting for someone to become sensible. That evening, Ronan and Mara returned to the Great Hall as the crown of Vale was restored. 500 wolves began to kneel. Ronan raised his hand. "No one keels." Confusion moved through the room. Then Ronan stepped away from the throne and stood beside Mara. Not ahead of her. Beside her. One by one, the wolves rose. Ash sat between them. Silver fur bright beneath the hall lights. Mara looked across the room where she had once been chained and realized she no longer needed its approval. That was why she could finally accept its respect. and when Ronan's hand closed around hers, she stayed because she had chosen to, not because a king commanded it, not because a bond demanded it, because this time, standing beside him, she was free.